Your Excellencies, I really appreciate to the government, Brazil government. I congratulate the President Ignacio Lula da Silva for organizing this event. Thanks to Mauro Vieira, Minister. Thanks Andrea Correa. Thanks Marina Silva. Devastating rains. Landfall recently in Mexico. 5 states were seriously affected. Around 90 municipalities incommunicated, more than 2,000 houses destroyed. A tragedy that remembers with painful clarity that climate change is not a warning, it is a reality, because it has reached all of us. The climate furor do not distinguish between different countries. Its truth is simply unanswered. What it is unacceptable, it is the paralysis of the world facing it. The volunteer of politicals, empty speech, cowardly and disguise on diplomacy. But in middle of this storm, we find some hope. The hope doesn't born from optimism. It is born from the conscience of the duty. This is not independent of our human condition. It is a responsibility as a nation and a conviction that define us as generations. Its strength, its effectiveness is in our hands, between these walls over here, right now. Here and right now in Belém, in this 30 COP about climate change, convoked by Brazil, in this COP of the truth, the COP of Latin America and the Caribbean, and the COP of the hope, I would say. I am honored to represent the President Claudia Sheinbaum, the first women president in Mexico, Hussein Sheikh. 10 years from Paris Agreement, Mexico confirmed its commitment with the UN about climate change. The name of this is called the third contribution of National 3.0, the NCO 3.0, a integrated route to accelerate our uncarbonization and to reach a development model with more justice. A regional matrix with the spirit of cooperation and solidarity, Mexico and Brazil convoked a meeting in August of this year for the first time to 22 countries from Latin America and the Caribbean to build a common position to COP30. The priority of this region was clear, to adapt and solutions based on nature. One of the effective strategies, our region is responsible only about the 11% of the global pollution, and is one of the most vulnerable, and is one of the ones that have the biggest biodiversity, sea and land. We estimate, for instance, that with the 10% of the 2,000 Mexican kilometers, we could reduce about 19 million tons of carbono, that represented 13% of our emissions in 2024. The 15% of our territory, it is occupied by tropical forests and mangroves. That is why we reaffirm our commitment to be part of these new ideas of COP30. In fact, recently, between Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize, we create the big Maya forest that has 5.7 billion of hectares of forest. In our NDC, the mitigation goal is in a framework of a long term that organize our effort to have zero emissions at the end of the century. For the first time, Mexico presents their goals in absolute terms. We compromise to get 374 of carbon tons in no conditional manner. This represents a reduction of more than 50% respect to the scenery tendency. Mexico also assumes a conditional goal not to go over 332, 362 tons of carbon. The NDC3, it is a route for a new way to industrialization in Mexico that is called Mexico Plan, that include strategic sectors as transportation, electric generation, industry, agriculture, and cattle, petrol, oil, and gas. We are also very committed to strengthen the circular economy, to solve plastic and waste and reduce methane emissions. The Plan Mexico reinforces prevention, food conservation of water, and the framework. We also treat the climatic change as a national security. This is one of the topics that will be included in the first national political of adaptation that will be published in 2026. Mexico is convinced of the importance of the solution of these problems with nature and the compensation for mitigation with nature. It is a way to get goals of the NDC2 and the NDC3. Mexico is convinced also with great consciousness that the impact that we are suffering due to the rains, hurricanes, etc., we should also incorporate a component of losses and damages to guarantee resources, technology, and capacities. We included also the transversal component, that is the gender, human rights, and equity. We recognize the indigenous peoples, Afro-Mexicans, women, infants, young, as victims for the high vulnerability in front of the climatic change. Resuming, it is structured in 5 pillars: mitigation, adaptation, losses and damages, implementation means, habitable conditions. Mexico contributes to the combat to the climate change with responsibility, with the mission and ambition as a state. This NDC 3.0 is not only a document, it is a route for all nations for the future. It was built by means of a very high participation process with the COP30 agreement, and is based on the best science that we have. It is also important to establish a link between COP and the investigation. The Trio River that was built in Brazil in 1992, and to measure above all and report together to design economies that allows to recognize the methodologies to get better the biodiversity and ecosystems with big carbon emission, but not to measure separated. It is to measure together and have methodologies to go ahead with this with harmony for the commerce, carbon commerce that is in limited territories national. There is no time to lose. Every day lose. Every loss and damages are recoverable. Communities that are going to be destroyed. That is why our new GDC, it is a test of our commitment to a climatic action, ambitious one, an integrated one. No nation, no one can go alone this crisis. We are saying the value of multilateralism. It is very well to be together and act simultaneously, and also not do only summing up the CNS, but also with financing that accomplished with the 9.1 article of the Paris Agreement. Today in the COP30, we are not going to speak about the future that we are going to have, but about the one that we can build. The hope is not an empty word. It is a collective action that demands our courage, the courage to invest in the life and not in carbono, to raise our kids. And we did everything we could do it. Ladies and gentlemen, we still have time to arrive and to save the goal of 1.5 degrees, but the window of opportunities is getting close. It is more important today than ever that imperative that the COP finish with a political sign clear to get a new route. It is a moment to let the old world die and have a new one, a world in which we can live with harmony with nature without leaving anyone behind. That's why I want to remember to end the words from the former president of USA, Barack Obama, said 10 years ago when this Paris Agreement was signed. We are the first generation to experiment the effect of the climate change, and the last one that would have the opportunity to put it back. Thank you very much.